Hey everybody, Ezra Levant here, Rebel Commander. It is nice to be back at home in our world headquarters in Toronto, Canada, in a secret fortified location. We really are slightly fortified here, it's truth. I say that because last week I was with a team of rebels in the small town of Davos, Switzerland, which is where the World Economic Forum hosts their annual conclave. Very reclusive place, hard to get to. One analogy would sort of be like Banff, the ski resort west of Calgary, because there's no airport in Davos. You can't get straight there. You have to, as we did, fly to Zurich and then drive a couple hours up many windy roads and bridges and tunnels through the mountains. Those Swiss are really good at making mountain tunnels. And by the way, you can't stay at Davos because that's the scene of Davos right now. I actually filmed that myself as we drove through the main drag of the town. Every single hotel, guest house, Airbnb is booked up a year in advance every year for that key week. In fact, hotel rooms, if you can get one, if you're a delegate, go for $10,000 a night. That's the kind of crazy, because everyone there is super rich. Not everyone, but there are at least 1,000 people who come on private jets. And I know that, again, from personal observation. I told you the journey I took there with our another Canadian colleague. We flew from Toronto to Zurich. We rented a car. We drove up, as you can see here. We stayed in a nearby town called Sass. There's another nearby town called Closters. You can't get any closer. And even in Sass and Closters, it was very expensive to rent a pretty modest sort of lodge. It was like a log cabin. I mean, it was fun. It had a fireplace to keep warm. And we actually cooked a lot of our meals in the kitchen there, so we tried to save some money that way. But the plutocrats, the billionaires, the oligarchs, that's not how they did it. In fact, I went to we went to two private jet airports looking for private jets. We went to one in San Moritz, and maybe you've heard of that. It's a super fancy ski place in the Swiss Alps. By the time we got to the airport there, though, it was snowing and foggy, and they basically shut down the airport. So we had driven all that way to find evidence of these private jets, but the airport was closed anyways because of inclement weather. So we went home with nothing. But the next day, we went to another private jet airport, and these are airports, that's all they do. You cannot fly a commercial plane into them. They are built for private jets and also for emergency aircraft like, rescue. There's a lot of planes flying around, a lot of helicopters flying around just in case someone gets in trouble, like air ambulance stuff and ski stuff. But that second airport we went to, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to remember, the town was called either Altenheim or Alterheim, and it was absolutely, in fact, there was a paparazzo, James Graff, who was there, stationed there when we arrived, just shooting up a storm. He had some amazing telephoto lenses to get super close-ups of the VVIPs getting off their jets. I follow him on Instagram now. He caught the Prince Albert of Monaco landing. He caught some Nobel Prize laureate. So he snaps these pictures and then he identifies who they are, because some of them you would just know by looking at them, but some are not as famous. He captured Prince Charles, as he then was, King Charles now, going to Davos. He's captured Woody Harrelson going to Davos, because really, if you want to set economic policy, social policy, foreign affairs policy, who would you look to other than Woody Harrelson? Because of the wisdom he showed when he was I would probably choose Norm at Cheers, the guy with all the not quite true trivia details, as opposed to Woody Harrelson as my guru. But Woody Harrelson flew private to Davos. So my point is, it's a hard-to-get-to place, extremely expensive, and I don't think that's an accident. I think they want to make it exclusive and reclusive, not inclusive, not conducive to rabble. Like I said, analogy I've been using, and I don't know if it's a good one, is that we were not accredited journalists. And to be accredited, you get to go in their inner sanctums. Let me correct myself, not their inner. There's like so many degrees. It's like a bullseye. So we were off the bullseye completely. We were not accredited. But one ring into the bullseye would be like if you are a helper to an important person or a media, they're the lowest of the low. And then another ring, you would be like a regular delegate. And then you would be like a head of state. Then you would be like a director of the board, like Larry Fink, the head of BlackRock, or Bill Gates, or Mark Carney. And then a trustee like Chrystia Freeland or Klaus Schwab himself. So there's so many layers, and it's such a hierarchy, and you can see that on their name tags. The name tags have different color codes, and actually, and Olivia, I don't know if you can call this up. I don't play too much of it, but I was stationed. The analogy, before I move on, the analogy I was talking about that I've been using is like a medieval society when you have, the aristocrat in the castle, and then you have a pecking order, and then you have the castle walls and the drawbridge, and then outside the castle, that's where the peasants would be. And so I was outside the drawbridge, and occasionally some knight, some fancy person from inside the castle would come out across the moat on the drawbridge and hang out with us peasants. And that's where I was able to scrum some of them, along with Avi Yamini and our other talent, Callum Smiles from the UK. We scrummed Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. We scrummed Greta Thunberg, actually in a 20-minute walk and talk with her that was quite revealing. We bumped into Mark Carney, former Bank of Canada, former Bank of England. We bumped into John Kerry, former Secretary of State, now the climate envoy for Joe Biden. We bumped into Tony Blair, former British PM, didn't say a word to us, not even a syllable. I bumped into Brian Kemp, the Republican governor of Georgia. I asked him, what are you doing at a left-wing gathering like this? So milling around outside the moat, and when some of these fancy people leave the castle, I think that's Brian Kemp there. Why don't you show a little bit of Brian Kemp there? It's not particularly riveting. I don't think most Canadians know who he is. My knowledge about Brian Kemp is fairly shallow, but I know that he's a Republican, and I know that Republicans generally raise an eyebrow about hanging out at a George Soros, Bill Gates, BlackRock event with Klaus Schwab. So I just had some questions for Brian Kemp, and I don't know why he just didn't give me a very simple answer. My questions were irritating. I admit it. I was annoying. I admit it. But I wasn't rude. I didn't swear. I didn't block anyone. And he really could have given me just a quick answer, and I would have absolutely broadcast his answer. Why wouldn't I? That would be a successful interview. Instead of just asking questions, he said, no, I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. Here's my walk and talk with Brian Kemp. I don't even think it's a full minute long. Take a look. Oh, I don't have audio in my ear. Do we have audio on the screen? When you're in the legislature, there's all sorts of checks and balances on you. There's the opposition, there's the media, but here it's sort of a secret conclave, isn't it? How come you're not talking to folks? Is that why you came here, to sort of get away from the scrutiny of the American media? When you're in the legislature. Okay, that's just a short clip of it that is looped. Anyhow, it wasn't that riveting an interview. There's a longer form version of it, Olivia, that the whole thing is only about a minute. Anyhow, we'll see if we can tee it up. Basically, here's a Republican from Georgia, which is sort of a purple state. It should be completely Republican, but of course, 2 of their Senate seats went Democrat, and there's a lot of shenanigans in that state. But Brian Kemp is the Republican governor. Why would the Republican governor go to Davos? What are you doing there? I know the answer that he has said elsewhere, which is to promote investment in Georgia. All right. Is that really going to happen here? Could be. But it seems like a strange thing for the governor of a Republican governor to do, to hang out with a explicitly anti-Republican, explicitly globalist, progressive socially Marxist, culturally Marxist group. They seemed weird to me. And I asked him about that, and here I'll show you what he said. So here's the entire interaction. It's not very long. Go ahead, Olivia. Thanks very much for finding the clip on short notice. Really quickly, what do you say to your critics who think this is a globalist event? I'll walk and talk.
No, we're good. I apologize.
How come you're blocking the governor from answering to his constituents? What would you say to your critics who think this is not the right place for America First Republican?
We're trying to. I think my story's pretty clear.
Governor. Well, but here you are with a bunch of globalists. Alex Soros is here.
Excuse me.
Why are you coming to a Soros event? I'm sure you have a good explanation.
Sir, we're not doing interviews right now. If you'd like to do something, you can call our team at the office and be glad to try to.
Well, we can walk and talk for a couple of minutes. Is this a rebuke to the America First wing of your party? There's a lot of censors here, a lot of big tech censors here. Do you criticize that? Have you talked to any of the globalists or censors and let them know your First Amendment point of view? Do you have a First Amendment point of view? Have you had any undisclosed meetings? I know that there are private bilateral meetings going on. Are there any that you've had that you haven't declared?
Like I told you earlier, you can reach out to my office about my calendar. We're glad to share that with you.
Well, why wouldn't you tell me right now since we're walking and talking? Well, it's a good time to do an interview. Have you met with Alex Soros? He's here. Do you agree with the energy transition plans of the World Economic Forum, Governor? They believe in getting off fossil fuels. Do you share that vision? They talk about an energy transition. Do you support that, sir? We're walking up to BlackRock's pavilion. Have you had any meetings with BlackRock? How come you're not talking to folks? Is that why you came here, to sort of get away from the scrutiny of the American media? When you're in the legislature, there's all sorts of checks and balances on you. There's the opposition, there's the media, but here it's sort of a secret conclave, isn't it? Given the price of inflation, meat, eggs, milk, things like that in Georgia, how does it feel going to a 5-star luxury event in the Swiss Alps? Does it feel wrong for the times? This really is a luxury event. Don't you think that sort of tone, it's the wrong tone for how it is in Georgia these days? You know, it went on a little bit longer. I was trying to fill the air. Very different than my interview or my talk to Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. I don't think I was being particularly attacky. I was saying, what are you doing here? Don't you think it's a little bit weird being here? It's sort of a luxury event. Who did you meet with? You know, I don't think I mean, they were prickly questions a little bit. They were annoying, I'll grant that. They are censors there. Do you have anything from a First Amendment point of view? What do you have to say about, you know, I just thought my questions were legitimate enough, and they should have been like really easy softballs right over home plate for him to hit a home run. I don't know why he didn't. Like, I'm pretty sure he has answers to all of those questions. Why wouldn't he just say it? I mean, why wouldn't he just repeat his message track to me? Look, I'm here to promote the state of Georgia, and I'll do that to anyone, anytime, any place. I mean, I'm just thinking of what he could have said. He could have said, I'm here, I flew here economy class for one reason, to get investment, and if I can get a single investment in the state of Georgia from the various wealthy investors here, it's worth it. And I'm not selling out my values. Everyone in Georgia knows what I stand for. I'm here to talk to people who don't know about Georgia, to put it on their mind, put it on the map. Like, that would be a really solid answer, and I think that is his answer. I just don't know why he wouldn't say, like, the fact that he wouldn't answer my questions made him look evasive. I just don't get that. I mean, he doesn't know me. Obviously, I'm a Canadian. He's a Georgia governor. I generally don't know that much about him. I was just trying to, you got the governor of Georgia for a 2-minute walk. You're going to try and put questions to him. Why wouldn't you do that? Anyways, I think my questions I would give my questions a 5 out of 10, and I would give his non-answers a 1 out of 10. Like, why wouldn't he just give me some easy peasy message track? The entire walk together was just a few minutes. The evasiveness was weird to me and unnecessary. I mean, with Albert Bourla, and I don't think I want to show the Albert Bourla. He's the CEO of Pfizer. I think I want to be careful about showing that on YouTube, because I understand from others that YouTube is actually giving you a strike if you show this on YouTube. Now, I know some people have put it up successfully. I think I was looking at Jimmy Dore, and he had it on YouTube. But at the very least, we can just show it without sound. Do you want to put up the CEO of Pfizer video? Thank you. And maybe we'll say, I don't know what your move is, Olivia, if we should switch to Rumble only and play the whole thing there. I'm actually guessing that most people who are watching this live stream right now have already seen this, because last I checked, this thing had like 19 million views on Twitter alone. I'll tell you right now. I'm just trying to find it here. It was just such a huge video. 19.2 million views of this video, and that's just on Twitter. And I have seen people take this and chop it up and repost it. I've seen it translated into so many languages: Japanese, German, Hebrew, even. I've sort of lost track. I don't want to guess wrong, but so many different languages of this going up. People are around the entire. In fact, it created a bit of a political controversy in India for some reason. I saw a whole bunch of Indian political talk shows really tuck into this because Pfizer was a controversial company there. They wouldn't show India all the testing they had done. They wouldn't cooperate with India. And so India said no to them in a way that Trump's administration did not. I wonder if Trump regrets that. I don't think he does, actually. So you can see in this B-roll, as we call it, that's video without sound, that Avi Yamini and I were doing the same sort of walking scrum with Albert Bourla that we did with Brian Kemp. But we were a little more aggressive with him, as befits Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, who has escaped public scrutiny for 2 years. If you want to see that video, go to WEFreports.com. I just don't want to play it on YouTube because we'll probably get a strike, which is incredible. If that video can get 19 million views on Twitter alone, it would have just done incredible numbers on YouTube were YouTube not a full-tilt Pfizer censor. And in fact, if Elon Musk were not the owner of Twitter, I don't think that video would have been allowed to run that way. Now, I want to show you a little bit more of what we did on the streets there. And again, you've probably seen this next video too, because 5 million people have watched it over the last 3 days on Twitter alone. It's a walk and talk with Greta Thunberg. And why don't we play a couple minutes of it? And why don't you put it on the screen and keep me in the lower corner, and I might chime in, although, I am chiming in real time. Why don't we take a little look at this? Let me just give you a little bit of background. We had heard that you could see she's coming out of a building that was the CNBC studio. So a lot of very important people would go there, including Albert Bourla, but they would be asked softball questions by softball journalists who are literally affiliated with Davos. So if you are the mainstream media and you pay Davos enough, pay Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum enough, you can be an official media outlet there, but you better not rock the boat. You better not ask accountability questions. You better not get off narrative and off script, or you won't be in good company and you'll be banned the next year or whatever. So there were hundreds of journalists at the World Economic Forum. They just weren't allowed to get rough. They had to be narrative promoters, narrative enforcers, not skeptics or critics. So I was waiting outside this along with a couple of other rebels and some other media. And I was waiting for 2 hours because they obviously didn't want her to come out. But she eventually did. And let's play it for 2 minutes. Just take a look. News. I'm standing outside the CNBC studio, the same one where the vice president threatened to clock our friend Avi Yamini. Of course, it's where all the VVIPs pop by to give their propaganda message, dutifully transcribed by the media party here.
How dare you!
It is the most important person in the world, according to the World Economic Forum. It is young Greta Thunberg. So we'll see if we can catch a minute of the young lady's time. Greta, how many times did you rehearse your arrest at the German coal mine? How many times did you rehearse it? Because it looked staged. Is it true? Okay. How many times did you rehearse your arrest? Greta, how many times did you film your arrest, and why was it staged that way?
Greta, considering you've not spent much time in school, how do you know so much about climate change?
Greta, maybe you want to talk to a real journalist. What did you talk? You here in Davos? Was it successful?
Greta, as a real journalist, is climate change as real as your arrest?
Greta, how far are you willing to go? You're willing to break the law. Will you renounce violence? All right. Will you renounce violence? Well, folks can see the rest of it. It's a 20-minute video, and you can see the rest of it at WEFreports.com. I wanted to show you that interaction there. Did you see that where another journalist says, Greta, if you'd like to talk to a real journalist, I'm a real journalist. And did you hear his question? What's his tough question? What are his viewers or readers dying to know? What's his accountability question? It's, hey, Greta, was your visit to Davos successful? Hey, Greta, what's it like to be so amazing? Hi, Greta, it's me. How good is it here? Is everything good? So that's not journalism, that's PR, that's stenography. We walked and talked, and me, Callum Smiles, and our friend Calvin Robinson from the UK's GB News put almost 100 questions to her. Almost 100. In fact, we have a news story up where we transcribed them. Now, some of them were sort of double-barreled questions. Let's say, depending on how you count them, there's between, put that up on the screen, there's between 75 and 100 questions. Like, do you support Antifa? You've worn an Antifa shirt before. Are you in favor of Antifa? So we call that one question, even though there's two question marks there. Do you think the fact these delegates take private jets is a bad thing against what you believe in? There's some really good questions there. You can find that at WEFreports.com. The questions by the mainstream media there were, I swear to God, I'm not exaggerating or making this up. One of them was, hey, are you going to have a protest here? Boom! Well, you just really, so glad you were here to ask her some scheduling question like that. That's your accountability question. You can't think of anything else. One of our questions, actually we asked it about 3 different ways, was why do you never criticize OPEC or Russia? Why do you never protest against them, only Western oil and gas? Anyways, listen, I've got to run. I just wanted to pop in and tell you that the work we did at the World Economic Forum was actually the most popular and widely viewed work we have ever done in the 8 years we've been running Rebel News. 19 million views and counting of our scrum with the Pfizer CEO. And you can find that at WEFreports.com. I just don't want to put it on YouTube because we'll be canceled for that. Over 5 million for the 20-minute walk and talk with Greta. You should watch that. Some people say they found her charming. Okay. Everyone has their own taste. But I think a lot of people were just appalled with how little she knew, how little she would say, her absurd answers, and her laughing off genuine questions. And like I say, we had other interactions too, whether it was Governor Kemp or John Kerry. It was a very interesting week. I'm really glad I went. I'm still a little jet lagged, to be honest. But it's something that Rebel News does a good job at. And I think that we're known as people who ask tough accountability questions. The questions aren't perfect. When you bump into someone like Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, on the street with 10 seconds notice, you haven't really prepared a big list of questions. You got to go off the cuff. But I think it was good stuff. And I think our viewers obviously agree because so many of them watched it. Anyways, I do have to go, but let me hand things over to our co-hosts who will continue with the program. My friend David Menzies, and I think Sheila, or is it Drea, who's joining as well. I apologize that I don't know that off the top of my head. I'm sorry, I should know that, but I'm so distracted. On my first day back after a week away, I'm doing catch-up. So let me throw to an ad, at which time I'll do a quick change, and my friend David will take the seat, and I believe it's Drea from Vancouver. So thanks very much for your support. Go to WEFreports.com if you want to see all our work. Let's go to an ad now, and when we come back from the ad, you'll have Drea and David. All right, talk to you soon.
Have you checked out the fresh new swag we have at rebelnewsstore.com? Like this nifty resistance trucker sweater? We have warm, cozy sweaters, t-shirts, mugs, hats, phone cases, you name it. Everything to fit your freedom-loving needs, or maybe even trigger a liberal family member or friend. And for a limited time, you can use code TAMARA10 at checkout to save 10% off of your total order. So head on over to rebelnewsstore.com, check out all of our new designs, make some purchases, and use code TAMARA, that's TAMARA 10 at checkout for 10% off your order. Head on over, check it out.
Oh, hey guys, thanks for watching the live stream, and sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to pop on to tell you about this incredible sweatshirt that I'm wearing, but also all the other great merchandise that we have available at rebelnewsstore.com. We're adding new stuff all the time, so be sure to keep checking. Even if you shop today, there might be something new tomorrow. And if you are shopping, be sure to use the coupon code Sheila10 for 10% off at checkout. Again, it's rebelnewsstore.com, coupon code Sheila10 for 10% off at checkout.
If you want to look good and shine like me, you can do so at our store. Go to rebelnewsstore.com. On this website, you have so much different style to wear, as this one, my favorite one, Justin Castro. With my code Alexa10, you will have 10% off on your next purchase. So don't hesitate, go now and look so good like me.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. The daily roundup continues. Our thanks to the big boss man, Ezra Levant, with all his Davos recapping. Wasn't that something? Absolutely incredible. What a trip. And we should talk a little bit about that. I'm David Menzies. My co-host is Drea Humphrey. She's proudly displaying her Christian Lives Matter. And I have to tell you, today's date, I usually do that. What is today's date? It is Monday, January 23rd, 2023. And you know what, folks? You know what day it also is? It is National Pie Day. Now, there's apple pie, there's pumpkin pie, there's rhubarb pie. But, you know, Drea, like myself, our favorite pies are projectile pies, and nobody threw them better than the Three Stooges. You don't have a... Well, how do you like that, folks? Super producer Olivia does not have it ready yet. But but while she keys it up, you know, Drea, like I said, so many pie varietals out there, but no one threw a pie as well as Curly, Larry, and Moe. What do you think?
I don't know. When I think of throwing pie, I immediately remember Bill Gates getting a pie in the face. So I don't know. There might be a tie there. There could be a tie.
You know, but by the way, I got to say, as much as I don't like Bill Gates in his new role as a public health enforcement officer as opposed to a software developer, I don't think that's cool to go up to anybody unannounced and stick a pie in their face. Of course, the Three Stooges, that was a controlled environment. They were all actors.
Exactly.
They all knew what was coming. But in honor of National Pie Day and the Three Stooges, why don't we just roll like a 40-second clip of some of the best pie throwing you'll ever see?
Something be done. You missed me. Yeah, that'll teach you. Folks, this must stop.
You know what, Drea, I got to tell you, best comedy troupe of all time. All time. If anyone out there, if any of our viewers think there's anyone better, Abbott and Costello, the Marx Brothers, make your case. For me, it is the Three Stooges, and quite a tragic ending to their. How iconic they were. They were basically screwed out of all residual rights, all other technology rights like VHS and DVD productions. If you can get your hands on a book called Mo Howard and the Three Stooges, he lays it all out there. But in any event, Drea, so good to see you. And we have so many things on our sheet today. Yeah. And it looks like, by the way, before I forget, this is where usually Sheila, the she-devil Gunn Reid, gives the lowdown of what we're trying to do and how our viewers can communicate with us. So I'll let you do that, Miss Humphrey.
All right. I'll be the she-devil today. Okay, so thanks for joining us. You got to hear from our commander, Ezra, and now you're watching us. So it's a very interactive show. We're going to throw through some of the latest news, and we want to discuss that with you. And we also give you an opportunity to help chip in to support our journalism, which, as you may know, we don't take a penny from the state government. So the Trudeau government. So you can do that by going to Rumble and going on their chats, and then we will read your chats, and it's really cool and interactive. And if we get into the COVID talk, which I don't think we are, we could abruptly jump off because this is YouTube if you're watching it on YouTube anyways. I think that's it. Sorry, I might have butchered that a bit, but okay. Am I missing anything?
No, that's just fine. And by the way, before we get on to the topics of the day, I thought our team in Davos, Drea, did such a fantastic job. I say this in a bittersweet way. I was mentioning this to our commander as he was departing for his inner sanctum. I think next year, I can't imagine we're going to get that kind of access. I think, be it Greta Thunberg or the CEO of Pfizer, or the head honcho at CNBC, that pathetic man that wanted to deck Avi Yamini. I think they were so humiliated by being put on the spot that I can't see this happening again. I think what we're going to see is, a couple of years ago, remember I went out to scrum, of all people, Ron McLean, at a Rogers hometown hockey event, and the York Regional Police, they formed a donut around him and marched him from studio to studio. And this is Ron McLean, right?
Yeah.
I can easily see that, Drea, happening next time the WEF congregates. The fact that there is going to be a security detail to keep those pesky independent media journalists out of earshot. How do you feel about that?
They might even be trying to sort of hide or disguise themselves. I wouldn't be surprised to see that too, like sunglasses and a hat and a toque, kind of like, celebrities do when they go to a mall or something like that. You might see something like that. But it's amazing how long, some of the interactions were with the walking. I mean, Greta at one point's like, where are we? She doesn't even, just walking and talking. So yeah, I would love to see that again, but I think especially, Albert, he's going to have people around him for sure.
Yeah, no, you're right. And of course, wearing a disguise, Drea, is a double-edged sword. I've seen that happen at the Toronto Film Festival in September. A celebrity wants to walk along the roadways of Yorkville, and they don't want to be mobbed for autographs and selfies, and they wear the cap, and they wear dark sunglasses even though the sun's not out. And guess what? You may as well advertise your Angelina Jolie or what have you.
Yeah, you're someone.
You stand out because of the camouflaging. But, the other takeaway from this, and I know, Ezra went through the WEF meeting wonderfully before we got on. To me, what struck me as so depressing but kind of unsurprising was that not only is the mainstream media sort of in on the game in terms of, we'll get access to these Grand Poobahs on the condition that we fire away softball questions to them. But when you see some of our footage, it happened with Greta, it happened with the Prime Minister of Luxembourg, and you see mainstream media people or people sympathetic to WEF actually interfering with a consensual conversation that's going on.
And answering on behalf of the person. Yeah. What is that? Like, do they already have the notes of what they're supposed to write before they even meet the person? Like, it was very bizarre to see. I mean, when you think of how we come up with our questions, we think, what do the people want to hear? What do the people want answers to? And that's what we ask. And here you have the journalists deflecting questions and giving the answers so you'll shut up. And what are we supposed to do? Quote them? According to CNBC, like, it doesn't even make any sense.
Isn't it just staggering, Drea? And that is indeed what I was going to ask you. What is that? How are you so entitled to interrupt an interview? And remember, this isn't a public area. I guess you're allowed to, but keep in mind, the reason why we're out for 2 hours waiting to scrum someone is because we're not accredited to go in with the beautiful people and the approved people. But so when we get that 15 or 20 minutes when we have a chance to ask questions, and, that's not threatening. I mean, these are all adults that we're interviewing. The idea that mainstream media would take it upon themselves to be security for these folks, it is just staggering to me, Drea.
Yeah, it's bizarre, but I'm so glad that we were there. I'm so proud of the team that went down. I was like, I don't know. I was so happy from home watching it. And I think a lot of people shared that happiness with us. Well, because, it's been a long time of these people not getting asked anything that goes against, the narrative we're supposed to just chew and swallow and say thank you.
100%. And some of the most watched videos in our company's history. That Pfizer CEO video, what are we talking about? It's been viewed over 8.3 million times when you look at all the platforms. So there is interest out there.
That's with censorship, correct? Like it was censored on some of the platforms, right?
Excellent point. And imagine that. Simply for asking these queries, that gets censored. It wasn't as though there was somebody on a soapbox in Davos spouting all kinds of outrageous conspiracy theories about the vaccine. Did I just say that? I mean, it seems that all the theories are coming true.
Cut.
But it was just a rapid fire questioning of the CEO. And I think he played it right. Well, he played it as, I'm sure the Pfizer company lawyers said, if ever anyone catch you, just do the Sergeant Schultz, I know nothing, I saw nothing routine. Yeah. And that's what he did. But doesn't it speak volumes that so many social media platforms, that just the process of asking a query, is this true blank, that gets you booted off the platform? That's an amazing amount of censorship to me, Drea.
Yeah, well, it's scary. It shows you where we are with all of this. And it always looks better when the person answers the questions. Like that top WEF doctor that answered Ezra's questions, you kind of can relate to them a little bit more. But when they just have this stoic, cold face and they act like you're not there, it doesn't sit well, I don't think, for anyone. It's like, what do you have to hide? Even if you're someone who believes everything they say, it's like, well, what do you have to hide with these questions? Why aren't you saying, well, that's not true? Or why aren't you saying these things? You know what I mean? When you're up against somebody who, I don't know if they're viewing it as misinformation, I wonder how that registers to people who have probably seen it and go, why are they not answering? But yeah, I mean, she sat there. I mean, Ezra was brilliant here. He really flattered her. And I love how he said like 5 times last question and then asked like 5 more questions. It was like the never ending. But yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that's the Columbo technique. Just one more question, sir, or ma'am, as the case may be. But how brilliant. And boy, I never thought I'd be so excited about a WEF meeting. And I am only so excited because if we can do that again next year in 2024, wow. But like I said, I really fear the access will be severely limited. I mean, Drea, they had 5,000 police and military there. And it's kind of funny. They all seem to be missing in action whenever there was a VIP, at least in their eyes, out on the road being scrummed by those pesky journalists. So we'll see what happens. And great work to everybody involved. So speaking of someone who loves censorship, I see Justin Trudeau is and his cabinet, they're having a retreat in Hamilton. And by the way, I say someone who loves censorship because if everyone's familiar with Bill C-11, if you're not familiar, you should get familiar with it. This is the idea of this government. They're going to monitor and censor what you have to say on the internet. And yes, of course, they're coming for us. But riddle me this, Drea. What do you think the biggest topics du jour will be at this retreat in Steeltown?
Well, as the article points out, Trudeau has just piggybacked across the country trying to convince everybody and their dog to get electric vehicles. So I would think that that's going to be at the top of the list. Rural communities are completely forgotten in that. And, I think it's really going to be about climate change and the action that needs to happen there. How about yourself?
Well, you know what? You're probably right. And you're right. There was that cross-country tour of Trudeau and sometimes Doug Ford doing these photo ops. Lincoln J went to one. We went to one in Ingersoll, the GM plant. Unfortunately, we don't know what they said because we were invited the night before. And when we got there, which is a 2-hour drive for each of us, we were disinvited by GM. And they wouldn't say who made them disinvite us, but I think I have an idea too. And by the way, folks, if we're not compensated for our expenses, we will be filing a small claims lawsuit about that because that was outrageous. And so it's all about the EV future. And it's kind of odd, isn't it, Dre? I mean, wouldn't they have more street cred if they practiced what they preach? I mean, when I look at all the government vehicles, especially the security detail for Prime Minister Trudeau, and as I found out last Monday in Toronto, Deputy PM Chrystia Freeland, they're all full-size, 8-cylinder powered fossil fuel SUVs. And by the way, you can get EV or at least plug-in hybrid SUVs, but they don't seem to bother. So it's for all of us to shell out the extra money for these vehicles and worry about range anxiety. But for them, no, we're quite comfortable with our Chevy Suburban XL burning high-octane gasoline. What do you make of this hypocrisy?
Well, yeah, they know they need the power, so they go for the gas. I mean, it's that simple. In case there's an emergency, they want to be able to gun it and not have to worry about anything like that. But you're right. And I think that, unfortunately, with a lot of politicians, they speak to who they think their voters are and who's paying attention. So while there's a small group of people who will be like, well, look at that, you're not even practicing what you preach. A lot of people are just listening to what they're saying in their speeches and actually taking it at face value. So I think they speak to a specific niche of people, and then they just tune out the other people who are pointing out logic like you just did in certain situations. They speak to their voters.
And one thing I am hopeful of that they're going to address how Canadians are being ravished by the economy right now. High interest rates, high fuel prices, high mortgage rates. Go to a supermarket. I don't know about you, Dre. I walk around with a basket. I go, that's about $50. And then when everything's added up, $107, please. I go, what?
Yeah,
I mean, talk about sticker shock. But,
There's all
this
these
is a
memes
government
going around too about like if you have like it's showing these really snooty people and then it's saying how you look if you have eggs in your cart, how you look at the people who don't. Like, I don't know, you got to see it. It's pretty funny. But yeah, it's crazy. And I remember at Costco, as a general rule, I kind of mentally would be like, okay, everything's going to work out to $10 per item. It would just kind of average out. And then that's totally changed as well. So I think that the article says they're going to talk about inflation. Oh, you found the meme. It's hilarious. It's like how people look with eggs in the cart. And I saw that exact same picture and it said how people with their own chickens look at others too, right? So I don't know about you, but I live in a place where you can't even have backyard chickens. It's illegal. So that's another thing that I just don't think is right considering inflation.
Oh, I mean, but in the meantime, look what we've seen in recent weeks, Drea. You had the German Chancellor come over to Canada, basically beg for liquefied natural gas, and Trudeau going, no, sorry, we have no need for $1/3 trillion, which the Germans were going to pay for that. Likewise, the Japanese Prime Minister came over. No, we're not interested in your do-re-mi. We're just fine. We're just flush with cash. We have no debt. We have no deficit. And it's all about virtue signaling, Drea. It's really all about subscribing to the cult of Greta Thunberg. I think this is so aggravating because we do have the means of lessening the economic pain for Canadians, and we have a regime in place in Ottawa that, they're just not interested.
Yeah, no, it's hard not to have some conspiracy theories about what's really going on here when you see opportunities like that get squandered when we're in such turmoil financially. So you got to ask why. Why would any leader pass on these things?
Oh, I would just say, for me, Dre, it's no conspiracy theory at all. It is simply that, like I said earlier, it's about virtue signaling. It's about Justin Trudeau saving the planet. And again, we dial it back to when you look at how Prime Minister Blackface McGroper is getting around these days. It's not an electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid. It's an old-fashioned fossil fuel burning full-size SUV. What a disgrace, But anyways, this is day one of this retreat, and we will keep an eye on where they are. I don't think we know. It wouldn't be hard to find out, but it is at a hotel in Hamilton. So we'll see what happens as we go on.
We got a couple of chats. Should I read them real quick? And
absolutely.
If anybody's just tuning in now, you can. Sorry?
Fire away, Drea.
Okay. You can go into Rumbles and chat if you want to chat with us. So this one is from Fraser McBurney. It says, for all those poor people who have taken the VCS, venomous COVID, COVID, you know what? I'm going to do a symbol. Make sure you take vitamin C and vitamin D. This will help mitigate the harm of the VCS, you know what. So thanks. Yeah, vitamin D, vitamin C, absolutely so important. And it's crazy how that advice was never given. And I always say, like, especially for people of color, because it's harder for us to absorb vitamin D. But yet they never just simply said, go to your store and make sure you guys are up to speed on that, right? And then we have one more from Times. It says, hi, Ezra, superb work. Thank you to you and the Rebels so very much. So thank you guys so much for your chats and your donations and your words.
Absolutely. And on the subject of vitamins, I mean, I've been a believer in that since the mid-90s, Dre. There was a period in my life I kept getting colds, and they were severe colds. And I decided, on the advice of a friend, to go to a vitamin shop, and it was vitamin E, C, D, a multivitamin, fish oil. It's really quite a schlep when I take my vitamins. There's all these, pill things. And I got to be honest, it's all anecdotal. But from that period on, I became far more healthy. So even before the COVID pandemic struck, I was a believer in vitamins. And, as Fraser said, what harm can they do? Do you take vitamins yourself, Drea?
Absolutely, especially my vitamin D and vitamin C. But and I had COVID. I think I had it twice. I know I had it once for sure. First time was a bit rough, but I made sure to take my vitamins. But yeah. All right. So speaking
it was
of
funny.
virtue signaling. Oh,
go ahead, Drea.
Oh. No, if you're going to be funny, go.
No, during the pandemic, I used to joke about this because I was going to elder care facilities, the airports with flights coming in from China. And during the pandemic, I had never in my life been healthier. Like it was kind of diametrically, opposed to what it should be, the reality. And, I didn't get COVID until I had that encounter a year ago, December, with Prime Minister Trudeau's Royal Canadian Mounted Henchmen, who laid the works on me, right? They roughed me up. And it was revealed, and I'll never forget, Sheila sent this to me while I was sick on my back for some 6 weeks. They, meaning the RCMP, gave this to you. There was some news articles, I think it was the CBC and the National Post, which indicated that half of Justin Trudeau's bodyguards were COVID positive. Can you imagine? And that
they gave you COVID.
Pardon me?
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
It's
you know what? It's unprovable, Drea. I admit that. Yeah. But when you look at the timeline, after that encounter, that's when I got sick.
They certainly weren't social distancing now, were they?
And you know what, Drea? That's the bitter irony. Remember, the reason why we were there was this is December of 21, and Justin Trudeau was telling everybody, with Christmas coming 2 weeks away, don't get together with your friends. Don't get together with your loved ones. Don't get together with your family. It's too dangerous. Wear masks, stay at home, social distance. Meanwhile, this facility we're at, the Cider Brickworks, he's having a $1,600 a plate fundraising dinner for the Liberal Party, and they're jammed in like sardines, right? Mm-hmm. And you can see, folks, I'm getting roughed up against that wall there by his thugs. Remember, I was on a sidewalk. They know who we are. They see the Rebel News mic flash. But the physicality I can handle, but what they did to me, and it was more than 6 weeks on my back, Drea. It was absolutely horrific. But we'll have our day in court on that. So, you stay tuned, folks. What else do we have? Well, you know what? Your excellent report, Drea, premiered on Friday evening, I believe. Drag queen protest time. Yeah, whatever happened to story time became protest time. Maybe we should run a clip of that. We'll give super producer Olivia a chance to find that. And Drea, you know what I've always asked, and I'm not making a joke of this, is this: how did this become a thing? Men dressed as female strippers, basically, reading stories to little children. What I'm getting at is, if I phoned up my local library and I said to them, I know an exotic dancer, 100% biological female, can she put on some sexy lingerie and come down to the library and, read to the kids? I'm sure the reaction is going to be no, but I don't get it. Like, can you connect the dots? Why is it okay for a man pretending to be a stripper reading stories, but a real female stripper, oh no, that's a little too risque for us?
Well, I think that the LGBTQ plus community has been hijacked. And so what's happening is there's these small groups of people that are getting power, they're feeding off of it, they're getting funding, they're getting money, they're getting attention, they're getting fame. And so they're using that community as a way to advance themselves. I dare say some of them are narcissists. And so if you really want my opinion, that's what I think is happening here. And our government likes this ideology. It likes this agenda. It likes the separation of kids from parents and division. And so it feeds into these things. And that's why it's happening. I mean, it's not a coincidence that it's happening at the exact same time all, across North America and some other places. That's not a coincidence. That's a backed movement, and that's what we're seeing here. And it's not what people are missing here is because they think, number one, you'll see the left in their media, they'll say anti-drag. It's not anti-drag protests that are happening. No one's going to an evening drag event and protesting drag performers. It is the event being for children, and normalizing that industry, or whatever you want to call it, that adult entertainment for kids. Yes, you are not doing the same performance that you would do for the adults, but you are telling babies at story times, there's babies to 5 years old, that drag and drag entertainment is kid friendly. So now when they grow up and they go online, or they see something that happens in 99% of drag entertainment, and they go, oh, well, I was brought up on this, and my mom or my teacher or whatever, they all told me this is normal. So what I'm looking at right now is normal. This is acceptable for kids. How can a kid know the difference? So it has nothing to do with the person. And I always say, if they had gone and read the story without their drag queen persona, that character, there would also not be a protest.
You're 100% right, Drea. I think you're right. It's about indoctrination. And we're not about shutting down drag queen performances. We believe in freedom of expression. And if a guy wants to dress as a grotesque caricature of a woman and go to a bar in the gay village, hey, there's a market for that. Good for you. But it is all about age appropriateness. We have age standards for all kinds of products, cigarettes, marijuana, lottery tickets, liquor, and and an example that is more germane to the point here, pornography, right? Mm-hmm. All those items that I listed, you can't buy unless you are the age majority. So why are we making an exemption for this? And, under the, mandate that this is about inclusivity, no, I'm sorry, mate. No, it's not. Children shouldn't be exposed to this. And Dre, I want to ask you this as a mother. What kind of parent brings their child to this kind of, outrageous performance in the first place?
I don't know. I think that these parents, obviously I can't speak for most of them, or all of them, but I think some of them just want to fit in some type of club. And so they use their kid as like, yay, look, I have a kid and I'm bringing them. I'm so cool. It's kind of like that kind of thing. And I don't think it's about the kid. You can see in the drag part 2, you can see a mom holding her child in the crowd, and the kid is terrified, like just absolute terror, because the characters walking around in that crowd were terrifying to look at, most of them. So it's not about the kids. It really isn't. It's about a movement and agenda, and they bring their kids and unfortunately make them part of that to feel good about themselves. And continuing on with this, shocking, did you see that Conservative MP Michelle Rempel, she
Drea,
got on board.
But before we get to Michelle Rempel, why don't we run a clip of your report that we've been talking about? Because I want everyone to see what you and Matt had to put up with. I want everyone to see another, indication of the loving, tolerant, accepting left in action. Check it out, folks.
Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News. I'm standing across the street from the Coquitlam Public Library, a place that prides itself on being safe for all members of the community and a facility that stands against all forms of hate. Yet those of you who watched part 1 of this 3-part series know that what occurred here on January 14th was far from loving and even further from safe.
We're going to take the SkyTrain out to Coquitlam Library, and we are going to create a bubble of love. The only way to combat hate is more love.
Sing, especially with the kids around and everything. We try to lighten it up and make it feel like, you know, festive.
Please don't film me. You're in public.
Who do you work for?
Doesn't matter.
Who do you work for?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who I work for.
You work for Rebel News, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Trust me.
This guy works for Rebel News. That guy
Of course I am.
Wow, Love is Louder. What version of Love do they subscribe to? BDSM? I mean, these are violent thugs, Drea. And by the way, I'm so happy that you and Matt, we had a security guard with you. Had we known it was going to go that sideways, we would have had more than one. I can tell you that much. These people are not worth getting beaten up over, that's for sure. And the other the main protesters, which were vastly outnumbered by the counter protesters, that's the pro drag queen contingent. They must have been really scared, especially since the police, well, they just didn't do their duty. They had no intention of laying down the law. Nothing to see here, folks. And, Drea, here's a question, too. Much as this has become normalized to go into a library or your local shopping mall, what is it with the Antifa types hitching their wagon to drag queen story time? I'm just trying to figure out who's who in the zoo and what their motivation is. What do you think?
Well, it is a zoo, and I'm working on figuring out. I'll have a little bit more answers on that for you in part 3, but you're right. Like, what are they doing? In the past, when I've seen them, they say they're fighting fascism, although they behave like fascists. Like, it's so confusing. They say that they think people are homophobic and transphobic and Nazis. These are they're obsessed with these 3 phrases, and basically anybody who disagrees with them is one of those 3 or all of those 3 things. They certainly don't check their facts either. I saw some of those same guys in black at a Christian freedom event put on by Laura Lynn, Let Freedom Reign tour, when Pastor Arthur came out here. And their number one thing they were protesting, or whatever you want to call it, they weren't violent that day, but they were very intimidating, is they were protesting somebody named Justin Gordon, and they said that he was speaking at the event. Well, it was just completely not true. He wasn't even, I don't even think he was there. There was hundreds of people, but he certainly wasn't a speaker. And it's very easy to see who is the speaker. So I don't know if someone is manipulating young, teens and young adults and just feeding them all these lies and getting them riled up, and that's why they come there and they feel like they're big people. I think it's something along those lines.
And you know what? I can tell you this, Drea, you used the word homophobia. In my circle, I know some gay men, I know some lesbians, and they want no part of this.
Oh, yeah, me too.
In fact,
Absolutely.
I've even heard of a movement when it comes to the LGBT community to, divorce themselves from the letter T, because if transgender means hitching their wagon to radical transgenderism, and that's what this is. I've always been, clear about this, Drea. If you're a man or a woman and you want to pretend you're the other sex and you want to go through hormone replacement, slice and dice your genitalia, you want to wear the clothes of the other sex, and you want to go through living your life, like any other citizen, hey, knock yourself out. But when you start, influencing society, especially minors, which is what this is all about, that's where I draw the line. And like I said, people I know who identify as gay and lesbian, they draw the line there too.
Oh,
so,
for sure.
Yeah.
The people I know as well. And, the kids are the future. And that's why these agendas focus on them, because they know if they can get them young, what's it going to look like in 20 years? And so it's important that we keep kids innocent. for as long as possible. And that's, I think, what most of the protesters coming out, if not all, that's all they're saying is we don't have to take something that's traditionally been adult entertainment and morph it into something for the kids. There is no reason to do that. So let's just keep kids innocent and their environments and their activities. And let's not use taxpayer dollars to do otherwise.
Oh, yeah, that's another issue. But, you know, Drea, I always hear so many people say kids are the future. For me, I think it's the hovercraft. I really do. Anyways, moving right along to someone, you mentioned this before we got off on the clip. Goodness golly, MP Michelle Rempel Garner, Conservative MP at that. Drea, what's she up to now?
Well, yeah, so if we look here, she is condemning the hate from all groups at an all ages drag show. So, no, I didn't even say, I shouldn't have said all groups.
Yeah.
She's saying the hate. And much like what you just saw there, where you saw where the hate was directed from, the politicians out here still said the small group of protesters that came there with a sign and a blowhorn, that they were the ones spreading the hate. So she's basically piggybacking with how the left uses this division and misses the whole point of what people are actually protesting. So if we look at our article here, it says on Sunday, a group gathered at a rec room venue to protest against an all ages drag show. Again, that is not hate. It is not against the drag queen. It's against the show. But counter protesters outnumber the group, showing up to support the performers. And so Rempel says, a wise queen once said, if you can't love yourself, how the hell you gonna love somebody else? Words to live by. They throw this love in here. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with love or hate just because you're opposed to an event. I mean, there's people, for example, Dave Chappelle, that were protesting his comedy show because they didn't like that he jokes about the trans community. Did that make them racist? Did that make them a hate group against Black people because he's a Black comedian? No, they just didn't like his content, what he's saying. It's nothing personal.
By the way, Drea, forgive my ignorance, but who is this wise queen that Rempel Garner is quoting? I mean, I don't, especially that part, Gona. You know, I don't think this was Queen Elizabeth. I don't think she would be talking. But do we have any answer at who the wise queen is?
Oh, I'm sure she just Googled inspiring quotes from drag queen and inserted it on her tweet and was like, yay, my woke quota is met today. You know, and it's not, she's done things like this before. I know we mention it here. So in a tweet dated on June 8th, she claimed she had privilege. Remember this? She says, as a cis straight white woman, she has privilege. And she's also a woman who works in a system dominated by white maleness. And then she says she can do better. So here's the whole, I have to scroll down. I have privilege. I am a cis straight white, but I am also a woman who works in a system dominated by white maleness. But no excuses. I will do what I can. That is all I can do. But it is much. Like, at what point do you sit there and say, I'm a successful woman? I mean, you're an MP and you can't even own that you're a successful woman. You still have to point and say, oh, there's too many men here. And, you know, I'm like, and then at the same time, you're saying you're privileged. I don't understand this. Like, I don't know how people were raised when they talk like this. You work hard, you get what you achieve. And if you win some, you lose some. Get over it if you lose.
Well, and I think the proof is in the pudding, Drea. If the system was so dominated by white maleness, as she says, then how did you as a female get into the club? And there are visible minorities who are members of parliament as well. So clearly, this is not some controlled cabal that is all about being male and being white. And by the way, while I'm ranting here, can we do away with that term cis to describe heterosexuals? You know, because, you know, to me, Drea, cis, to me sounds like sissy, you know. And
I know,
I'm
it's
done.
like-
I don't know how that became the moniker du jour. If you want to call people like myself and Drea, a particular demographic, heterosexual is just fine. Don't you dare call me cis. I hate it.
And who sits here and comes up with these new words anyways? Why are we renaming heterosexuals? Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, and then to see conservatives do it. But Michelle Rempel she also stood up for the WEF, if you recall that as well. She was like, they're not destroying Canada. So I don't know. Let us know. Is anybody commenting about this? Because I feel like people would have something to say about this for sure.
Well, I know our colleague Sheila Gunn-Reid commented about this in the morning meeting because I think, Michelle Rempel, Garner, and Sheila had a somewhat of a bond. And then I think, hopefully I'm quoting Sheila correctly, then she went on to lose her mind. But you know what? I wonder what triggered this person, Drea, to go to the side of wokeness, because the stuff she says, it doesn't sound to me like what a conservative would subscribe to.
Yeah, I wasn't there at this protest. Maybe somebody was there and they said something actually hateful, but I was at the other one. It could offend people, obviously, and I understand that if you're using words like pedophile. But if you notice, he's actually saying you guys support pedophilia. He says that over and over. He actually doesn't even call anybody a pedophile. I'm not really saying that that's the best approach, but my point is the left is just calling anything that opposes these events hate, and then calling, no matter what, even Antifa being violent, that's love. And Michelle Rempel seems to be just jumping on that bandwagon.
Drea, Antifa, they take the cake because, as I've said in other occasions, Antifa is a contraction of anti and fascist, but this group uses all the means and methods of fascism: intimidation, vandalism, violence. Aren't they better described as simply FA for fascists as opposed to Antifa?
I think so. Using force to silence other people's opinions, that would be more accurate. But again, you use love to disguise hate. So you say Antifa to disguise that you're fascist. It's actually a pretty effective strategy. We have a chat that came in from Helena Noonan, $25 donation. Thank you very much. Says, after seeing Jordan Peterson remove his personal tweet supporting Steven Crowder due to conflict of interest with the platform he's on, it's clear just how invaluable Rebel News is by being independent. Well, thank you so much. I know we were talking in our meeting today. We sure hope nobody out there thinks that, we're having these $50 million contracts to complain about. Right? like if they're making it, what's the Rebels making? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, no, that's not happening.
It must be nice. That's why I keep buying those lottery tickets. But, speaking of Jordan Peterson, I'm watching with fascination, Drea. I believe a week today, yes, January 30th, at the Canadian Tire Center in Ottawa, where the Ottawa Senators play, there is a growing number of groups trying to get him deplatformed. And they're the usual suspects. But the last story I read on this, it was, I hope I got the name right, I think it was called the Ottawa Historical Fencing Society. What in blue hell, Drea, would offend people that do swordplay? Why would Jordan Peterson be so offensive to them? I mean, you'd think they'd be on the side of Jordan Peterson. Fencing, I know they've toned it down from what it used to be, back in the days when you used a sword to actually kill your opponent. We have body armor to prevent those tragedies. But why would the Fencing Society be against Jordan Peterson?
I bet you money's coming in. And that's why you'd have to do an FOI. But it makes, well, you can't even, I think, with that society. But you're right. What's going on here? And what if they released his regulatory body released the damning tweets. Like, it's nothing. There's nothing bad in it that is worth all of this commotion. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Well, we'll see in the days ahead if they are successful in canceling Jordan Peterson from speaking in Ottawa. But one thing we do know that has been approved, no shock here, but it's unfortunate. Looks like the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway in Ottawa, it will be no more. It's going to be replaced. They're going to strive to put an indigenous name on that. Now, tell me, Drea, I know you have, you're part indigenous yourself. What do you make of this kind of cancel culture going on right now?
I just don't understand why we can't make new things. Why do we have to erase history and then replace it? Why do you have to tear it down? Like, it's part of history. It's part of Canada. Leave it alone and make new things with new people's names that you want to recognize. That's basically my opinion on that. And and they're taking books out of school, like certain history books or classics that we used to read for the same kind of reasoning. And then this information isn't even available. So it's concerning to me.
Yeah, I would say this, as much as it might be unpopular in certain circles to say this, Sir John A. Macdonald was a great man. I will also say this, show me a great man or a great woman, and I will show you a flawed man and a flawed woman. Nobody is perfect. Nobody. And the idea that we would bring this revisionist history lens to those of, that were around 150, hundreds of years ago in many cases, I just think it is completely unfair. And Drea, I'm willing to, give an inch on this debate. You see this in the UK a lot with people who had edifices named after them. And basically it's found out, they were a slave owner, for example. They install a plaque saying, there are those who believe that this person is not justified in being honored because, and it lays it out. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, that would be good too. Yeah, point it out.
And because I believe in having a debate. But what we see with the renaming, and anyone that wants to visit Toronto, and this is the most despicable thing of all, at Queen's Park, still, I think we're on to year 2 or year 3 maybe, Drea, the Sir John A. Macdonald statue has been entombed in a wooden coffin with a garbage bag over his head. This is under the watch of Premier Doug Ford. And I'll tell you why it's despicable. Because the first one to get going on the tear down the Sir John A. Macdonald statues, it was the city of Victoria out in your parts.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's still gone.
It's gone.
Who comes every Canada Day with a paper cutout, a life-size one, and puts it back every Canada Day. But
oh, is that right, That's interesting. But Doug Ford at the time said to the city of Victoria, send that statue over to Toronto. We'll put it on the north lawn of Queen's Park. And he's gone from that, of having 2 Sir John A. Macdonald statues, to going after the existing one, covering it up. And there's some notice there. It basically says, we don't know what to do about this thing. We're going to think about it. We're going to... It's 3 years it's going on right now. This is despicable.
Oh man, it's just, and what happened to vandalism? Like, I thought that was a crime. You know what I mean? Like, it's just whatever.
Yeah.
Do we have time? I know we're getting close, but I really wanted to talk about the action that took place in Vancouver with all of the opposition getting together politically in one big happy family for the first Lunar New Year celebrations in Vancouver. So you had Trudeau come out for that, obviously Premier David Eby, BC's new premier. You had Jagmeet Singh, Pierre Poilievre. You had also Kevin Falcon, the leader of the BC Liberals, who have just changed their name. They are no longer the BC Liberals, so that people don't confuse them with the federal Liberals. Their new name is BC United. So
sounds like a soccer team.
That's what someone else said at a protest I covered. They want to recall David Eby, and I can't say the joke. It was actually a doctor. I'll do another sign. But he said it sounds like a soccer team, and that's not good because right now soccer players are what suddenly.
I shouldn't laugh at that. And by the way, folks, I'm not laughing about what Dre is referring to. I'm laughing about the perverse censorship world we live in, where we can't say certain things. But just to set the record straight, though, but you're right. So it's BC United, and the amazing thing. You know what, Drea? How come Prime Minister Trudeau isn't doing the Mr. Dress Up shtick? And
you're right.
Yeah,
that's a good question. So you can see that Kevin Falcon is doing it, but Trudeau must have resisted. Maybe he's gotten some advice. You got to stop with the costumes. Enough is enough, because you're right.
Well, knock me down with a feather. It does appear that you can teach an old dog new tricks.
Maybe we can't see the pants though. But people have mixed emotions about this, and there's good valid points on both sides. People are saying, well, none of them are going to want to miss an opportunity to celebrate this in Vancouver, which has a large Chinese community. And so what are they going to do? Fist fight each other while they're there? So I see that point. But it's just, it's unsettling to others to just see them all so cozy together. And first thing that came to mind when I looked at it is, if you remember that when all the leaders of the party got together to propagandize people into getting the jabs. Do you remember that? It was during the debates, and they social distanced from each other, and they had this like orchestrated message for people. It was so creepy. But anyways, that immediately flashed in my mind, and it reminded me of that. But one thing I want to point out here is our woke premier here in BC, Premier David Eby. Oh, I gotta find it. I'm scrolling down. Forgive me, because I don't want to misquote him. Oh, here we go. So he says BC Premier David Eby also attended the festivities and took a moment to reflect on the tragic shooting in Monterey Park, California. So horrible shooting. 10 people were massacred. So it's horrible, and it makes sense for him to reflect on that. But listen what he says. He says, it's just a reminder of why we need to fight racism every day in British Columbia and Asian racism. And what better way to deal with a big party on the street to celebrate our diversity, the contributions of Chinese Canadians, of Asian Canadians, and Asian British Columbians. So, but here's the thing. I don't know what kind of lawyer this is, but he certainly doesn't have his facts right, because the suspect, who they believe did the shooting, is Asian. So why are you lumping these two things in together? He says it's just a reminder of why we need to fight racism.
100%, Dre. It's just such a knee-jerk reaction that he would assume that this was some kind of racist attack. It was much like there was an attack. It was not a fatal one, but I believe it was at a Mississauga mosque where the attacker was also Muslim. I think he might have been a member or a previous member of the mosque, and it was being reported as an act of Islamophobia. Well, like, how's that possible? I mean, if it's Muslim on Muslim violence, where's the Islamophobia part of it? Maybe he's a self-hating Muslim. I don't know. But more to the point, that's a breaking news story. We don't know any of the facts, we know some facts. But for him to play the racism card automatically, what a fool.
Yeah, and he's reaching out of country to do it. So he's not using our own, use an example of Canadian hate against Asians. If it's a problem, we need to know what that problem is and understand it. You're grasping from another country to play this virtue signal. You don't have your facts straight. And now you've misled so many people who also aren't getting their facts to believe that, I don't know, some middle-aged white male who's racist came and shot a bunch of people. Because, the news is also not showing the alleged killer's face as well very often. I had to really keep searching to find. So, So I think we have one more super chat here.
Okay, and then I think we have to wrap it because the big boss man needs the studio, and I don't want to keep him waiting, Dre.
Nope. So it's a quick one, and it's from Times Again, $5 donation. Thank you very much. And it says, MP Rempel was a young global leader. She is a liberal. Appears she does not like Canada. Well,
and I have no argument against what Times just said there. I really don't. I look at the stuff coming out of that woman's mouth, and I am flabbergasted. So, who knows? Well, Drea, thank you so much for filling in for Sheila Gunn Reid, and thank you to super producer Olivia, and thank you to everybody from tuning in, especially those who kicked in a few bucks to keep our lights on. I'll be gone for the next 2 days on an assignment, so I believe Sheila Gunn Reid will be here, and we'll just say with a mystery guest. How about that? So in the meantime, as always, folks, stay safe and stay sane.
Time in a democracy in which the wealthy have wealthy and big corporates have enormous concentrated political power deriving from their wealth, you get a self-reinforcing system in what I would think of as an Adam Smithian direction. And that's Adam Smith's worries about capitalism, which is basically the system is rigged for the benefits of the economically powerful. And cumulatively over time, it becomes less competitive and less capitalist and less open. And we see there's a lot of research which suggests that that has been what's happened. That, of course, interacts with what the states have been doing. So we end up with a capitalist system which does look significantly less dynamic and significantly more